Welcome to Lesson 1 in the course ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of Music Theory. This is Understanding Basic Notation, and for this lesson you just need to download the Understanding Basic Notation booklet. It's a PDF file that you'll be able to use to follow along. Alright, so the first thing we're going to look at is the music staff. Now, the music staff is a set of 5 lines and 4 spaces, and each of them represent a different musical pitch, and we use 7 letter names to identify pitch. They correspond to the first 7 letters of the alphabet, and they are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Every other note is shown by using an alteration, which we'll look at in a future lesson. So let's take a look at some of the symbols that we use on the staff. These are note and rest values. Rhythmically, a note tells you when to play and for how long to play, and a rest tells you when not to play or how long you shouldn't be playing. And every note that you'll see also has a corresponding rest of the exact same duration. So the first note we're going to look at is called the whole note, and its corresponding whole note rest. A whole note lasts for 4 beats, and this means you just hold the note for 4 beats and release. A whole rest also lasts for 4 beats. This means that there's no sound for 4 beats. The half note and the half note rest are essentially exactly what the name describes. It lasts for 2 beats, or half of a whole note, and the half rest also lasts for 2 beats, where there's no sound for 2 beats. The half note essentially looks almost like a whole note on a bit of an angle, and now we've introduced a stem as part of the symbol. The quarter note and its corresponding rest lasts for 1 beat, or 1/4 of a whole note, and this looks like a half note with a filled-in black note head, and also has the stem. Quarter note rest, it looks a little different. It kind of looks like a little bit of a squiggly line with a curve on the bottom, and might be a good idea to practice writing these symbols out several times just to get the hang of it. The 8th note and the 8th note rest last for half of a beat, or essentially we're now dividing the whole note into 8 distinct sections. And the 8th note simply looks like a quarter note with a flag on it to indicate that it's an 8th note. You might also want to practice drawing the 8th note rest a couple of times too to get the hang of that. Now the 16th note and the 16th note rest continue to divide the whole note up into smaller parts. And this time we've divided it into 16 distinctive parts, and we indicate this with what looks like an 8th note with an extra flag on it. So there's 2 flags on it, and the 16th note rest looks very much like the 8th note rest with an extra little hook on the left-hand side. From this point on, you can continue to subdivide the bar into smaller and smaller pieces, into 32nd notes, and in half again to 64th notes. And essentially every time you do, you just add an extra flag to the stem, or you add an extra little hook on the left-hand side to the rest. Now, note beaming is a symbol that's used to make reading rhythmic notation a little bit easier. If you have a group of 8th notes or a group of 16th notes or even smaller subdivisions, generally you can tie them together with a straight line across the top, or if the stems are going down, a straight line across the bottom. This allows you to look at chunks of notes in groups and be able to easily distinguish that they're 8th notes or 16th notes. And in the similar fashion to the flags, you only use 1 beam for 8th notes, 2 beams for 16th notes, 3 beams for 32nd notes, and so on. Now, when you write notes on the staff, you have to make a decision as to whether the stems point upwards or downwards. This is very simple. Typically, the stems of the notes that are below the middle line point up, and the stems of the notes that are above the middle line point downwards. And, stems that are right on that middle line can either point up or down, depending if they're as part of a group or something, whatever tends to look a little neater. Now, musical instruments can cover a wide range of pitch from very low to very high. One staff generally can't represent all of those notes in a clear fashion, so we use what are called clefs, which are from the French word for key, to indicate what range of notes we're referring to on a particular staff. The first clef we're going to look at is called the treble clef. Also goes by the name the G clef because the circle at the base of the treble clef wraps around the line G and indicates that that line is the note G above middle C. The other lines and spaces are all then assigned names in alphabetical order, going both up and down from this assigned G. And moving up the staff indicates that the sound's going higher, and going down the staff indicates that you're going lower in pitch. So if we look in the lines of the treble clef starting at the bottom, we can see that they're labeled E, G, B, D, and F. Often people remember this by thinking every good boy deserves fudge or every good boy deserves fun. Whatever works for you, but generally it's something that you'll have to memorize. The spaces in the treble clef are labeled F, A, C, E. And this one's a little more obvious. Most people just remember it as the word face. And again, something that you have to be able to memorize and be able to recognize instantly. Now, because we only have 5 lines and 4 spaces, often we have to go above the staff or below the staff to indicate different notes. To do this, we use what are called ledger lines, and really it's just a way to indicate a line or a space that continues above and below. These are used generally to keep things a lot neater looking. If stuff got over 5 lines, it'd be very difficult to glance at a staff and be able to recognize instantly what note it is. Now the bass clef, which also goes by the name F clef, indicates a much lower register of pitch. If you look at the bass clef, you can see that the 2 dots are around a particular line. This clef indicates that that line is F below middle C. And like the treble clef, notes continue on alphabetically up and down away from this line F. So if we take a look at the lines in the bass clef, we can see from bottom to the top, they're G, B, D, F, and A. Again, some people remember it as good boys deserve fudge always, or good boys deserve fun always. And if we look at the spaces, you'll see that they're A, C, E, and G from the bottom up. And some people remember this as all cows eat grass. Again, whatever works for you, and it's something that you have to be able to memorize and recall instantly. And just like in the treble clef, the ledger lines work the same way. They allow you to continue above and below the staff in alphabetical order to indicate notes that aren't represented on the 5 lines or the 4 spaces. Now, this lesson is intended to just give you a basic understanding, an introduction to the musical staff, both treble and bass clef, the notes on the staff, ledger lines, etc., to just start getting you familiar with the concept of reading music. As we continue in the course, we'll start looking at many examples with increasing complexity so that you start to associate certain rhythms and certain sounds to what they look like on paper. Even though it's not essential for a lot of musicians to be able to read and write music, to become great songwriters, it's still one of the best and most accurate ways to convey ideas between musicians, as well as work out your own musical arrangements and ideas on paper. So take your time and go over the document a few times to really lock this stuff into memory. In the next step, there's a short little quiz that'll test you on each of the things that we've covered, and once you complete that, you'll be able to move on to the next lesson.